I'm Frankie, and I head up Red Cow Entertainment, a small group of friends and creators out of Massachusetts who have been making feature films, podcasts, web series, documentaries, reviews, and animations for decades. We love making stuff. We take great pride in everything we put out, and we're never going to stop. Red Cow is not a full-time job for any of us, but apart from our families, it's why we live. New fans discover us all the time, but since we've made such a large variety of content, their starting place is normally from one show or podcast, like BoxMac, or from our discussions about Cinemassacre, and they have no clue who we are otherwise, or about the massive backlog that awaits them, if only they would explore it. So in this video, I'm going to touch upon all the major milestones of Red Cow Entertainment, describing the films and series that you might want to check out, and answer some common questions. I dabbled in very early Adobe Premiere when I was 14 and made backyard movies and cartoons, inspired primarily by South Park and Troma. We became Red Cow Entertainment in 2000 when I met Jon Hunt, a musician and technology enthusiast who mentored me as I learned more about audio, cameras, and computers. I was on the high school track team with his sister, and we wanted to make comedy sketches about our experiences, and she said, "My brother is interested in film and he'd get a kick out of you," which started a lifelong friendship. Jon was 20 at the time, living at home with a full-time job, so he had a little bit of means to buy some film equipment, and I noticed the mailing address said "Attention to Red Cow Entertainment." "Why Red Cow?" I asked. He explained that he really liked the logo of the cow on Newport Creamery, so he made it red as to not rip it off. In November 2000, I met my first real girlfriend, Nina, who I went on to marry and have a child with, and who's helped produce all of our content to this day. At 14, specifically after seeing Cannibal the Musical, I got it in my head that we should make a feature film, a musical of our own, about an obese high schooler called I Need to Lose 10 Pounds. Jon and I wrote all the songs, I co-wrote the screenplay with two close friends, and for the next 6 years, after many false starts and through immense adversity, we stumbled our way through shooting a feature film. The effort of writing the screenplay started freshman year of high school. We started shooting real scenes when I was 16, and the final film was delivered when I was 20. Here, Red Cow mainstays Zach and Matt, originally friends of Jon's, were massive helps, as Zach recorded audio for most of the production, and Matt starred as the main villain, Richard Simmons. For a group of very young people, the production was enormous. We shot in dozens of complex locations, secured school buses, coordinated musical numbers, action sequences, courtroom scenes. One reviewer would later call it the Lord of the Rings of high school productions. I viewed this movie as a defining moment of my life, the moment that will determine whether or not I could make a feature-length film, and to that end, it was the best film school I could have ever hoped for. During that period, we worked on a lot of other projects, but most notably, one of the co-writers of 10 Pounds and I made Lord of the Rings by George Lucas, an animation that lambasted the prequels right after Attack of the Clones came out. In 2006, I would upload this to a very early YouTube and receive several million views, which would lead to me appearing in the documentary The People vs. George Lucas. Funny enough, the producer was Robert Muratori, the cinematographer and supporting star of Cannibal the Musical, who I became friends with. I made a follow-up about Indiana Jones 4 just before Crystal Skull was released. And years after that, the director of People vs. George Lucas made Doc of the Dead, a documentary about zombies, and asked me to make an animation for it. So, in that same style, I made an animation about the most famous directors pitching zombie films, though that was cut from the final film, but it is available on YouTube. 10 Pounds was completed while I was at film school at Emerson College in Boston. The movie went on to win Troma Dance 2006, Troma's indie film festival next door to Sundance, and even got bought for distribution rights by Troma, and today is available on their streaming service, as well as on Blu-ray and digital download at redcowentertainment.com. I should note that on YouTube and on all the Red Cow Blu-rays, we produce a tremendous amount of special features, commentaries, and behind-the-scenes documentaries. While at Emerson, I met an entirely new group of collaborators and friends, many of whom went on to have notable careers. In our freshman year, a group of us won the National College Film Competition Campus Movie Fest with our short final exam. With 10 Pounds complete, I wanted to prove that I could turn another feature film around, in way less time and at much higher quality, and with more committed collaborators. In 2006, myself, Nina, her brother, and two of our oldest friends, Jake and Keith, wrote a story outline for Abo the Humonkey, a high-concept comedy about a half-man, half-ape. Abo, we decided, is barely sentient, but surrounded by deluded admirers who think he should be provided an education and full human rights. I decided to star as the titular character. We partnered with a student from Tom Savini's School of Makeup and had a custom foam prosthetic made, and this was the first film in which I worked with a cinematographer, my good college friend and roommate, Doug Bergdorf. Poetically, I had starred in a stage production of Cannibal the Musical at Emerson and met John Ryan and Ben Fisher, who would become Red Cow mainstays starting with Abo. Lloyd Kaufman, president of Troma, even makes an appearance. Jon once again funded the technology, and Aaron, an old high school friend, produced. We started shooting in January 2007 and screened the final movie in July of that same year. This movie also screened at Trauma Dance and is only available at redcowentertainment.com. ABO is a ridiculous movie and was a wonderful experience. I went to Los Angeles for my last semester at Emerson for their internship program, where I worked at 20th Century Fox Casting. I thought I might pursue a proper Hollywood career, but quickly decided that I hated the traffic, the smell, and the culture of Los Angeles, and longed for Boston and the Red Cow family. While in Los Angeles, a friend of a friend cast me as Ugly Jen in the horror comedy Psycho Sleepover, later distributed by none other than Troma. When I got back, Nina and I got married and started working full-time jobs. And in my new IT career, I met a new group of collaborators who offered to shoot my next feature, and Jon volunteered to do audio. I wrote a comedy about sexual politics, marriage, and friendship called Sexually Frank. The previous two features were surreal and satirical and high concept, whereas this film would be naturalistic and in some ways lifted directly from our lives. This time, Nina, Keith, and I would be in the starring roles, alongside John Ryan and Ben Fisher. Nina and Keith are not actors, but delivered extremely heartfelt performances that I consider highlights of Red Cow history. We took this film around the world, screening at Cinekink in New York City and the Sydney Underground Film Festival in Australia, where it won the Director's Choice Award.
Sexually Frank to Frankie Frame.
Keith and I actually flew to Australia for a few days, and it was amazing to see our film screened on the other side of the globe to a packed audience of strangers. We were also reviewed by Film Threat. The film is available on Blu-ray and digital at redcowentertainment.com. I went back to Emerson for my master's in fine arts and graduated in 2012 with Sexually Frank as my thesis film. It was during that time I met E.J. Massa, who quickly joined the Mount Rushmore of Red Cow, and is my primary collaborator today. EJ was a talented animator and cinematographer, and among all of the students in our program, we quickly found each other as like-minded individuals. Also, during the production of Sexually Frank, as podcasting was getting bigger, I thought it might be fun to sit down with my hilarious friend Aaron and tell old stories and crack each other up once a week. How Ah We ran for nearly 90 episodes and was the beginning of what would become Red Cow web content, a way to build and keep regular contact with a fan base while we worked on bigger projects. Podcasting was so easy and fun, we began doing several other series, most notably Discount Film School, in which I interviewed industry professionals, film festival programmers, and my most prominent collaborators. It was through that podcast I was able to interview Lloyd Kaufman of Troma, Jason McHugh, who produced What Else? Cannibal the Musical, and DC Comics artist and Red Letter Media regular Freddie Williams, who was a fan of our YouTube channel and has become a friend. In 2012, I also produced and co-directed a short comedy called Vibes with one of my MFA classmates. The How Ah We podcast started to have Jon as a regular guest, and his extremely unique and idiosyncratic personality made for endless fodder. On the show, Aaron would call him Junt, combining Jon with Hunt. Specifically, Jon would talk about what a bargain hunter he was, and we would laugh about how much he loved his local church fair, so much that we followed him there with a camera in the summer of 2013, unknowingly producing the first ever episode of What's in Junt's Cart, which would go on to have more than 100 episodes. Malls, church fairs, Black Fridays, flea markets. If there's a deal, we bring Jon and we film him. Viewers often tell us it feels like they're hanging out and shopping with us. This is one of the most popular shows on our channel. I also met writer Jeff Torelli in the MFA program, a drummer turned filmmaker who had written a short film called You Guys Looked Like You Were Really Having Fun Up There, about an aging musician who recognizes that his goal to play professionally has all but failed. The short had great characters and insights, and I asked Jeff if we could adapt it into a feature and if I could direct it. As a detour, he was making a feature about longtime inspiration Lloyd Kaufman and invited me to shoot with him on the set of Return to Nukem High in 2012. The following year, we went on to make Having Fun Up There, starring good old John Ryan in his third Red Cow role, and the film was shot solely by Kyle Gage, who previously shot Sexually Frank and Vibes. Where 10 Pounds took 6 years to make, we shot Having Fun Up There in 9 days, and it was edited and delivered just a few months later. The film won both Best Screenplay and Best Film at the Boston Independent Film Festival, and was an official selection at the Buffalo Niagara Film Festival, the Seattle True Independent Film Festival, and the Austin Film Festival, which was by far the biggest festival in which we had ever screened. The same year, I wrote a book detailing the entire experience, and if you want to learn all about filmmaking, I highly recommend you pick it up on paperback or audio at redcowentertainment.com. The following year, the Austin Film Festival asked me to be a screener for their festival. In the background, we were still occasionally podcasting, but EJ was independently producing his animation series EJ Comic, and asked me to voice a number of them, which led to EJ and I producing 3 comedy animations together. One about what would be the upcoming Force Awakens, one about pretentious Kickstarter campaigns, and one about how Breaking Bad creator Vince Gilligan is only capable of producing gold. EJ's enthusiasm for camera technology and videography was increasing, and he started to do it professionally and even did some camera reviews for his own YouTube channel, Excitement Bicycle. He said if I ever wanted to shoot something together, he'd be happy to run camera. Nina and I didn't have a big wedding because of the expense, and had been talking about co-directing a documentary about how expensive the wedding industry is. We made Til Debt Due Us Part in 2014, and it was in large part shot by EJ. When finished, Til Debt Due Us Part would screen at the Massachusetts Independent Film Festival, and it too is available on digital and Blu-ray. In addition to Junt's Cart and podcasts, Jon had been pitching a new web series idea. BoxMac, he called it, in which we would try every single mac and cheese at the supermarket. We could pit the craft varieties against each other, find the 2 cheapest ones and try those, see if mac and cheese tastes better with butter or margarine, and much more. We were longtime mac and cheese lovers, and Jon's pitch was that we could shoot it on iPhones and just keep it low effort. Instead, EJ came over one night to shoot this new show as a lark, and we applied the same level of care to making BoxMac as we did all of our projects. After the first episode, Jon got a chef's costume for comedic effect, and Zach and Matt, our old friends from the 10 Pounds days, eventually joined the crew. We all loved making BoxMac, and pretty soon we found an audience who did too, as popular YouTubers and a prominent Reddit post started driving more traffic than we expected to the channel.
I sent these guys, they have this show that they do called BoxMac Review.
So we actually found this mac and cheese from these YouTubers we all watch. They upload once a week where they make mac and cheese and taste it, and they compare mac and cheese to other mac and cheese.
The success of those shows and Junt-related content would define Red Cow from that point on. We produced hundreds of BoxMacs, as fans sent in Macs from Iceland, Japan, Australia, Canada, the UK, and more. We brought on old friends as guests, made lots of new friends, were featured in local press, received incredible fan art and crafts, like dolls modeled after each of us and a mac and cheese quilt. We were introduced to fun and strange cultures, and used the show as a sandbox for every creative whimsy, where the show just kept building upon itself. Of special note, we made large-scale Halloween specials parodying the Food Network, Mystery Science Theater, Goosebumps, even a full-length parody of Birdemic called Boxdemic. Matt, in particular, lent incredible crafting talent, building sets and puppets and costumes. We went just as crazy with our Christmas specials, often producing hour-long variety shows with music, different segments, arts and crafts, and lots more. On April Fools, we even parodied ourselves, making a spin-off series called Bag Trash in which we reviewed trash bags, proving that the subject of the show wasn't what mattered, but the fun we were all having joking and talking. We often hear people ask, I don't eat mac and cheese, will I like this show? Fans of the show know that it has everything and nothing to do with mac and cheese. We often use our kitchen time just to talk about whatever's interesting us that week. True to ourselves, we've been producing collectible Blu-rays of all BoxMac and BoxMac adjacent shows, which you can get on redcowentertainment.com. Because of BoxMac, a show we made as a funny side project, we now had a steady and returning fan base after decades of creating content. EJ formally joined Red Cow's YouTube channel and started uploading a variety of videos under the banners of EJ Reviews, which includes his long-running EJ Cooks, in which he mostly grills ribs. But he also reviewed each episode of Game of Thrones for several seasons, all the way to the finale, which brought in a fair amount of viewers as well. Since Jon had become such a well-liked and fascinating character on the channel, we made a lot of Junt-inspired spin-offs, such as BoxMac After Hours, where we read fan mail, Scavenger Junt, in which we search his property for interesting items and ask him to explain them to us, Pewtersmith, where Jon teaches us about his antique computer collection, Juntin' Around Outdoors, where Jon shows us what's going on in his garden that season, and Junt SNES, one of my absolute favorites, in which Jon, Keith, and I reviewed Jon's extensive Super Nintendo collection. We produced that show in our Red Cow studio during a period of time where we rented studio space for new projects. We spun off a few others too. Nina and our friend Paula had a short series called Glitter Bitches, in which Paula, a gregarious Italian diva, teaches Nina how makeup works. I created a show called No Views, in which we find very low to no view narrative films on Vimeo and review them constructively, as if we're considering them for a film festival. R.I.P. Restaurants and Retail, which is kind of like a Junt's Cart spin-off where we visit the locations of long-closed restaurants and stores and reminisce. Review Lounge, in which we engaged in roundtable discussions about Oscar nominations and other major movie events. And finally, Pirate Pizza Review, a fictional show that we created as part of the plot of a BoxMac Halloween show in which Zach and I review frozen pizzas that we decided to keep making years after the initial joke was over. And during all this YouTube action since 2015, Nina and I had our daughter Gloria, and EJ had his 2 boys. Gloria has become a regular in our content. As we started developing a healthy Patreon, EJ encouraged me to record a podcast with him as a patron perk. And like BoxMac before it, what started as a small endeavor incrementally became more produced, as we added video. We especially leaned on the podcast as a means of producing content when COVID hit, since we recorded them remotely, and I started to post snippets on our Clips channel just to promote the Patreon. In one of these clips, we discussed the career of YouTube pioneer James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, and many of the challenges his company had been having at the time. This video, which was a recorded Zoom call while we were in our PJs, blew up to one of our highest viewed videos ever. Angry AVGN fans suggested that we had no right to critique Rolfe, since we had never made anything creative of our own. Many viewers, however, found the discussion insightful and stuck around for all of our other clips or subscribed to the Patreon for the full-length shows. The Clips channel was quickly adapted into the Red Cow Arcade podcast, which rivals our main channel for views and engagement. Both channels are still relatively small in the scheme of YouTube, but the engagement from our fans has been very high, and we're so grateful for that. Since we've been unable to do this full-time, the stress of parenting, constant content creation, and demanding day jobs took a toll on my health, and I gained a very unhealthy amount of weight for a few years, until COVID, when I started working remotely and lost 140 pounds. As Red Cow Arcade was growing, I had just put out a video detailing the weight loss, which inspired the creation of a Red Cow Discord, where we discuss health and fitness, along with every other topic you find on our channels. And that Discord has led to even more new friends and creative collaborations. And that brings us to today. Thank you so much for hearing the story of Red Cow Entertainment. I hope this gave you the context you needed to better understand who we are and the enormous backlog we have to offer. If any of the web series sounded interesting to you, go to the playlists on the Red Cow Entertainment YouTube channel and try them out, and subscribe to both channels to keep up. All of our content is also carefully categorized on redcowentertainment.com. We've been going strong for decades, and we have no intention to slow down now.
Today we will be talking about Puss in Boots and The Last Wish. I don't know if you've seen it, but it is a very good movie.